The school bell hadn't even finished ringing, and Ayana was already bleeding. No one saw it. No teacher, no security camera, just the cold tiles of the girls' bathroom floor, and the echo of 3 girls laughing as they walked away. 17-year-old. Ayana lay there quiet, confused, and holding onto her torn backpack like it was the only thing she owned. She didn't cry. She never cried, because in a school like Westbrook High, tears only made the sharks swim faster. And while other students cheered in the gym, laughed in the cafeteria, or planned their weekend parties, a quiet black girl was being dragged, humiliated, and tested in ways no one could see. But what they didn't know, what no one saw coming, was what Ayana was about to do next, and how that one silent move would flip the entire school upside down. And far away, on a city bus, another black teen gave up his seat for a tired, pregnant white woman. She handed him a note, one sentence, one choice, and it would change both their lives forever. 2 weeks earlier, Ayana had transferred to Westbrook High. Her family had just moved across the city after her mother lost her job and needed to stay with relatives. It was supposed to be temporary, a few months at most. Ayana didn't complain. She never did. But adjusting to a new school wasn't easy, especially when you were the quiet one. She didn't dress flashy. She didn't try to fit in. She came to school, kept her head down, did her work and left. That was the plan. But quietness in some places draws more attention than noise. On her very first day, Ayana accidentally bumped into Macy, a girl with sleek blonde hair, manicured nails, and a voice that always came with a smirk. Ayana had barely whispered sorry before Macy had already turned to her friends Tori and Jade with a look that said, "Who does she think she is?" They didn't say anything that day, but it began. The stares, the side comments, the snickering when Ayana walked past in the hallways. She tried to ignore it. She had more important things to worry about, like her sister's hospital appointments, the homework she always completed on time, and the part-time job she secretly worked on weekends to help her mom. But school has a way of pushing quiet kids into corners. By the second week, it wasn't just looks and whispers. One morning, she found her locker open, her books tossed inside like trash, her science project 3 days of work smashed under someone's boot. No one saw who did it. No one cared to ask. She reported it once, but the counselor smiled sympathetically and told her to try to get involved with others more, like it was her fault. So she stayed silent. Until that Tuesday. It started out like any other day. Ayana walked in early, her backpack heavy, her eyes focused on the floor. She barely noticed Macy and the girls watching her from the stairwell. "Ayana," Tori called out sweetly as she approached her locker. "Hey, girl, can you help us real quick?" Ayana paused. She looked up slowly. They were smiling too much, too friendly. "Yeah," Jade added. "Just need a hand in the bathroom with something. Won't take long." Ayana didn't want to go, but she also knew saying no would make things worse. So she nodded slowly and followed them. The bathroom they led her to was the one at the end of the west wing, old, unused, and too far from the main office. As soon as the door shut behind them, Ayana knew she'd made a mistake. Macy shoved her shoulder first, not too hard, just enough to send a message. "You've been acting like you're better than us." "I haven't," Ayana whispered. Tori leaned in close. "Then why are you always so quiet, huh? Think you're too good to talk to anyone?" Jade blocked the door. Ayana's heart raced, but her face stayed calm. She didn't blink. "Let's see what you've got in your bag," Macy said, reaching for the zipper. Ayana stepped back. "Don't," Macy laughed. "Or what?" And that's when Ayana reached into her coat pocket. She didn't pull out a weapon. No screaming. No pushing. She pulled out a folded photo. A little girl with a hospital wristband, smiling bravely at the camera. "This is my sister," Ayana said, her voice low but sharp. "She has sickle cell anemia. We've spent more nights in there than I can count. My mom works 2 jobs, and I pick up shifts after school so we can afford her meds. That's why I don't talk much. That's why I don't hang out. That's why I don't care about your opinions." The girls fell silent. Even Jade stepped away from the door. Iona didn't yell. She didn't plead. She simply looked at each. One of them, steady and fearless. "I'm not scared of you," she said. "I just don't have time for your nonsense." Then she walked out, leaving them stunned in that cold bathroom. Holding their silence like it was heavy. By lunch, half the school had heard something happened. Stories spread, exaggerated, twisted. But all anyone knew for sure was that Iona had stood up to them and didn't flinch. But the real story wasn't just about Iona. It was still unfolding on a city bus miles away. Deshawn was 16, tall for his age, with kind eyes and headphones that were always on. He didn't have much, but he always had enough manners to notice when someone needed help. So when a tired, visibly pregnant woman stepped onto the bus and no one moved, he stood up. "Take my seat, ma'am," he said, pulling off his headphones. She smiled, surprised. "Thank you, sweetheart." He nodded, heading toward the back. "Wait," she said, pulling out a small folded note from her purse. "You might need this someday. Don't open it now. Read it when you're alone." Deshawn took it, confused but smiled. "All right." He had no idea the note would connect him to a girl he'd never met. A girl who had just walked out of a bathroom with blood on her shirt and fire in her heart. A girl who, in the next few days, would shake an entire system. But not yet. For now, Deshawn tucked the note in his jacket pocket, and Iona walked home, unaware that her silence had just begun to echo louder than any scream. Chuck said the wind was sharp that afternoon as Iona walked home, her hands tucked deep in her pockets, her head low against the chill. The backpack on her shoulder felt heavier than usual, not from books but from the weight of what had just happened. Her heart was still thudding in her chest, not from fear anymore, but something else, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Control. For once, she hadn't stood frozen. For once, she didn't let them take her silence and twist it into weakness. But that didn't mean it was over. As she reached the bus stop near the corner of 5th and Marlowe, she could feel eyes on her. A few students from Westbrook stood nearby, whispering, glancing at her, then looking away. Word had gotten out fast. She wasn't sure what version of the story they'd heard, but it was spreading, and people were looking at her differently. Some curious, some surprised, some like they didn't know what to think. Iona pulled out her phone. A text from her mom popped up. "Please check on your sister after school. I've got a double shift tonight." Without replying, Iona turned left and walked the extra 10 blocks to the children's hospital. Her little sister, Leah, had been admitted 3 days ago after a pain crisis hit in the middle of the night. Iona had sat by her bedside, reading stories, adjusting pillows, rubbing her back when she cried. Leah was only 10, bright, goofy, and tougher than most grown-ups Iona knew. When she walked into the hospital room, Leah was sitting up in bed, coloring with her oxygen tubes in. She grinned when she saw her big sister. "You look mad," Leah said, raising an eyebrow. Iona sat beside her and smiled softly. "I'm not mad. You always say that when you are mad." There was silence between them for a moment, the soft beep of machines filling the space. Then Iona reached into her pocket and handed her the folded photo she'd used earlier that day. "I brought this with me to school today." Leah looked at it, then up at Iona. "Why?" Iona stared at the wall. "Because sometimes people don't understand silence until you show them." "What's behind it?" Leah blinked. "Did you get in trouble?" "No," Iona said. "Not yet." Back across town, Deshawn was lying on his bed, the note still in his jacket pocket, untouched. He'd almost forgotten about it until he changed clothes for work. He pulled it out slowly, turning it in his hands. It was just a small piece of folded paper, but something about it felt heavy. He sat on the edge of his bed, the room silent, and finally opened it. The handwriting was clean, almost careful, but the message was short. "One day, your kindness will unlock a door no one else can open." He stared at it for a long time. It didn't say who the woman was. No contact. No name. Just that single sentence. Deshawn wasn't the kind of guy who thought too much about fate or signs. But this, it didn't feel like just a thank you note. It felt intentional, and it wouldn't leave his mind. He folded it back up and slipped it into his wallet. The next day at school, Ayanna felt the shift before she even entered the building. People moved aside as she walked through the hall. Not in fear, but in recognition. Whispers followed her like a shadow. Some students gave her small nods. Others avoided her altogether. She wasn't invisible anymore. But visibility came with its own kind of danger. Macy wasn't in first period. Neither was Tori. But Jade showed up. She didn't say a word. She just stared at Ayanna during the whole class, like she was waiting for something, maybe for Ayanna to back down, maybe for her to explode. Ayanna did neither. After class, as she walked through the courtyard, someone approached her, a girl named Rosa, who was always in the drama club and never really spoke to Ayanna before. "Hey," she said softly, "what you did yesterday, that was brave." Ayanna looked at her, surprised. "I didn't do it to be brave." "I know. That's why it mattered." Then Rosa walked away. Later that afternoon, while Ayanna was at the hospital again reading to Leah, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something told her to look. The message read, "They're not done." No name, no other words. Her fingers tightened around the phone. Was it a threat, a warning, a joke? She didn't reply. But something deep inside her told her this wasn't over. Meanwhile, Deshawn's week was taking its own turn. The note had settled into his thoughts like a song stuck on loop. And then on Thursday, something strange happened. He got called to the principal's office, something that never happened. Waiting inside was a man in a dark grey suit, clean-cut, with sharp eyes and a calm tone. "You're Deshawn, right?" The man said. "Yes, sir. I'm from a private education group that partners with youth outreach programs. We heard about your bus gesture." Deshawn blinked. "I just gave up a seat." "Exactly. That's what caught someone's attention." "Can I ask, did she give you a note?" Deshawn hesitated. "Why?" The man smiled. "Because the woman who gave you that note, she wasn't just a passenger." Deshawn's stomach flipped. "What do you mean?" "We can't say more yet. But keep that note safe. You'll understand soon." And with that, the man left. Deshawn stood there in the office, unsure what just happened. But one thing was clear, something bigger was happening behind the scenes. And it was moving fast. That night, Ayanna sat by Leah's bed, scrolling through her messages again. Nothing new. No more strange texts. But something inside her felt unsettled. She looked at her sister, sleeping peacefully under soft blankets, and made a silent promise, "They don't get to decide who I am." But the truth was, forces much larger than school bullies were starting to circle both Ayanna and Deshawn, and very soon their lives would collide, not just because of kindness, not just because of courage, but because someone somewhere had been watching all along, and the next move would belong to them. Chuck said it was Friday morning, and the clouds hung low over the city, making the sky look tired and heavy inside Westbrook High. The tension was quiet, but thick like the air before a storm. Everyone knew something had changed. Not just the usual drama or hallway rumors. Something deeper. It wasn't just about Ayanna anymore. The halls that once ignored her now parted when she passed. Some kids looked at her with something close to respect, others with resentment. But the ones who mattered most, Macy, Tori, and Jade, had gone strangely silent. No more whispers, no fake smiles, just silence. That kind of silence meant something was coming, and Ayanna could feel it. She kept her head down, stuck to her schedule, but her mind was racing. That's strange. Text "they're not done" kept repeating in her head. She hadn't shown it to anyone, not even her mom. Something told her to keep it close until she knew more. She didn't know who to trust anymore. At lunch, Rosa waved her over to sit with a group. Ayanna hesitated, then sat quietly at the edge of the table. The conversation wasn't about her, and she liked that. It was about the upcoming college fair and which schools were offering scholarships. Ayanna listened carefully. College had always been the goal, but it felt more like a dream lately with everything going on at home. Leah's treatments, her mom's, double shifts, the late-night grocery runs with coupons, it all made the future feel distant. Across the cafeteria, Jade sat alone, eyes locked on Ayanna. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't eating. Just watching. Something about it made Ayanna's stomach twist. That night, Ayanna walked into the hospital room with a bag of snacks and a few books for Leah. But Leah wasn't there. The bed was empty. Her heart skipped. A nurse came over. "She's in radiology, honey. Just getting her scans." Ayanna exhaled in relief, then sank into the chair beside the bed. She noticed a card sitting on the table. It was bright red, folded neatly and had no name. She picked it up and opened it, inside in small, perfect letters. It read, "Some people only learn after everything is taken from them. Stay strong. You're not alone." No signature, just like the text. Ayanna looked around. No one seemed to be paying attention, but this was the second strange message in 3 days. It wasn't just the bullies now. Something else was happening. Someone was watching. Across town, Deshawn couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling of his room, the note in his hand again. The man who came to school hadn't given much away, but his tone said it all. This wasn't random. That woman on the bus, the message she left, and now this mysterious group that had heard about it. It was more than coincidence. He pulled out his phone and typed her words into a search bar. "Your kindness will unlock a door no one else can open." Nothing came up. No quotes, no references, nothing. It wasn't from a famous speech or book. It was meant specifically for him. But why? The next morning, he checked his email. A new message. Unknown sender. Subject line, "The door is opening." There was no body text, just an attachment. He hovered over it. His instinct told him not to open it, but his curiosity won. It was a photo, grainy, low resolution. A school hallway. Not his school, but as he zoomed in, he saw a girl walking, head down, clutching a backpack, and in the corner, the words, "Westbrook High, Ayanna." Deshawn had never met her, didn't know her name, but now, for some reason, someone was connecting him to her. He sat back, confused and tense. What did this mean? Who was sending this? Was she in trouble? And why was he involved? The next few days passed like that, quiet but crawling with unease. Ayanna felt it in every classroom, every corner. The school was pretending everything was normal, but she could see through it. Something was brewing. Then, on Wednesday, the school announced a surprise Student Voices assembly. It was framed as a way for students to share concerns and celebrate courage. The timing felt too perfect. The principal's office claimed it had been planned weeks in advance, but everyone knew it hadn't. When Ayanna's name was read out loud during the announcement as one of the speakers, her chest tightened. She had never signed up, never agreed. At lunch, Macy approached her table for the first time since the bathroom incident. Alone, she leaned down and whispered, "You should skip the assembly." Ayanna didn't flinch. "Why?" Macy smiled without warmth. "Because some people can't handle the truth, and some people don't like being exposed." She walked away before Ayanna could respond. Later that day, Ayanna sat in the library, trying to study, but her focus kept breaking. She was starting to connect the dots, the messages, the photo, the assembly. Whoever had set her up to speak wanted her voice heard and others didn't. She checked her phone. Another text. This one just said, "You're getting close," back in his neighborhood. Deshawn stared at the new photo he'd just received. This time, it was clearer. A group of girls dragging someone toward a bathroom. The time stamp matched the day of Ayanna's incident. The message with it read, "She stood alone. Now it's your turn to stand with her." Deshawn didn't know who she was yet, but the name Westbrook was ringing louder now. And whoever was behind these notes, they were building something. The tension wasn't just personal anymore. It was organized, calculated. Ayanna was being pushed forward like a cymbal. But she was still just a girl trying to survive school, protect her sister, and stay out of trouble. Deshawn was being dragged into something he didn't understand but couldn't ignore, and someone somewhere was pulling the strings, watching them, testing them, preparing them for something bigger than either of them could see. Chuck said the day of the assembly arrived, and from the moment Ayanna stepped into school, something felt off. The hallways were quieter than usual. The usual background noise, the slamming lockers, the rushed footsteps, the sharp bursts of laughter was all muted, like everyone was holding their breath. Ayanna's name had been posted on the school bulletin, announced over the intercom, and shared in whispers all week. Everyone knew she would be speaking, though she had never agreed to it. In the bathroom mirror that morning, she stared at her reflection for a long time. Her braids were neat, her shirt freshly ironed, but inside she was a storm. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from pressure, from the knowledge that this moment, for whatever reason, was bigger than just her. She walked through the cafeteria like she had 100 times before, but now every table seemed to stop and watch her pass. Some nodded, some smiled, others just stared, but no one said anything. And at the far corner of the room, Macy sat with her arms crossed, whispering to Jade, her face unreadable. In the office, the principal greeted her kindly, like he was trying. "Tahad, we're proud of you," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's important for students like you to be heard." But Ayanna didn't trust his smile. Not anymore. Not after everything that had happened in silence. He had known about the bullying. He'd seen the reports, and yet no one had ever stepped in until the whispers turned into headlines. The auditorium was already half filled. When Ayanna stood at the back, waiting, a few other students were scheduled to speak before her. Poetry readings, a song about unity, a short story about friendship. It all felt rehearsed, safe, controlled. But Ayanna's story wasn't safe, and the people who had dragged her into that bathroom hadn't faced any real consequences. Yet, from his seat in the third row, Deshawn sat straight, eyes fixed on the stage. It had taken him days to find a way into the school unnoticed. He didn't go there, but someone had left him a pass in his mailbox with just one sentence written on the back. "She speaks today. So do you?" He didn't know how whoever was sending these messages was getting all this information. But the more he followed the clues, the more it became clear this wasn't about chance. It was deliberate. Someone had orchestrated it, brought him here, pulled the strings. He looked around the room, students, teachers. Even a few local news cameras were setting up quietly in the back. This wasn't just a school assembly. It was becoming a stage for something bigger. Ayanna's name was finally called. Her legs felt heavy as she walked up the steps. She hadn't written a speech. No note cards. No microphone rehearsals. Just her truth. As she reached the podium, the spotlight hit her face. The room went still. She scanned the crowd and saw Rosa. She saw a few teachers she trusted. Then she saw Macy in the second row, her arms crossed, expression blank. And just behind her, someone she didn't recognize. A man in a dark suit, watching her closely. Ayanna leaned into the mic, heart pounding. "I wasn't supposed to be up here," she began, her voice soft. "I didn't sign up for this. I never wanted to be in the middle of anyone's attention." A few students nodded. A few sat forward. "I came here to learn, to survive, to protect my sister. And I thought that if I kept my head down, I'd be safe." She paused, swallowed hard. But silence doesn't always keep you safe sometimes. It makes you a target. The crowd was still. She could hear someone shift in their seat. The cameras had started rolling. I was hurt in this school, not just once, and not just by students but by the silence of adults who knew and said nothing. At that moment, something flickered in Macy's face, something that looked like panic. Ayanna took a deep breath, but that day in the bathroom, I stopped being silent, not because I was brave, but because I had no choice. From the side of the stage, the principal whispered something into the ear of a security officer. The man nodded and started walking toward the back of the room, toward the entrance. Deschon saw it too, and at the same time, his phone buzzed. In his pocket, a new message. If they silence her, the truth dies here. You're not just watching. You're part of it. He stood up. Ayana continued, her voice growing firmer. We talk about unity, about kindness, about student voices, but only after someone bleeds, only after the damage is done. She looked out at the crowd. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here so the next girl doesn't have to wait until it's too late to speak. That's when the room shifted. From the back to more people entered. Both in black coats, they didn't look like teachers. They took seats near the back and started typing something into tablets. Ayana saw them. So did Deschon. Suddenly, the microphone crackled. The sound system cut for a second, then returned. The principal stood up quickly, walking toward the stage with a rehearsed smile. Thank you, Ayana. Very brave. Let's move on. But she didn't move. I'm not finished, Ayana said, stepping forward. And in that moment, every student in the auditorium held their breath. Deschon stepped into the aisle. She has the right to speak, he said clearly. Heads turned. The principal froze. And who are you? Someone pulled out her phone. Cameras were now recording more than just the stage. Something was happening. Macy stood up suddenly. She's lying, she blurted out. She made all this up. Ayana looked at her. You know that's not true. Another student stood. Then another. Rosa, a kid from the art club. A girl who had seen Macy shove Ayana once and said nothing. They all stood quietly, one by one. Deschon reached into his pocket, slowly pulling out the folded note the woman had given him on the bus. He raised it in the air. This note started all of this, and it's led me here. To her. The two people in black coats stood now. One of them began recording from a separate device. The principal looked overwhelmed. Then the power flickered. Lights dimmed for a second. The mic cut out again, and for a brief moment the room felt like it was holding its breath. Ayana stepped down from the podium, straightened her shoulders, and walked toward the front of the stage where the principal stood. You said student voices matter, she said quietly. So let us speak. The silence was thick. Everyone waited, and just then the fire alarm rang. Loud, sharp, jarring. The room exploded into chaos, but Ayana didn't move, and neither did Deschon, because whatever was about to happen next, this was the moment everything had led to. The climax was coming, and no one could stop it now. Being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Sometimes, the ones who stay silent the longest are carrying the heaviest battles, and when they rise, they shock the world. Ayana didn't need to scream to be heard, she let her actions speak. And Deschon proved that one small act of kindness, like offering a seat, can ripple into something life-changing. This story reminds us that never judge someone just because their quiet strength often hides in silence. Stand up for yourself, even when your voice shakes. And most importantly, kindness is powerful. It doesn't cost a thing but can mean everything.